Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Alliance Guys podcast.
Woo!
With me, as always, my ally, my confidant, the champion of domestic tranquility, Mr. Kevin Douglas, the modern day hero.
Hey.
And of course, it's me, Jake Howell, the head honcho here at Alliance-Wrestling.com, your number one source for news and information for the National Wrestling Alliance. This is a presentation of Alliance-Wrestling.com. You can follow us on social media pretty much everywhere now at the Alliance blog. And I don't want to waste any time talking about New Year's resolutions or talking about anything but NWA power. First and foremost, Kev, I think you've seen the videos. I'm pretty sure you've seen the videos. What are your thoughts on Mr. Nick Aldis, our world's heavyweight champion, invading Ring of Honor?
Well, Ring of Honor is already invading the NWA, so it's not, to me, it's not a big deal. But I will say this, Nick Aldis, and you since I've been on the show, you heard my reluctance at the beginning to kind of jump on board, to start drinking the Nick Aldis Kool-Aid. Of course, I as a wrestling fan, long before I was a wrestler, can cheer for the bad guys just as much as I cheer for the good guys. Coming up in the Attitude Era, where we all cheered for the bad guys, and we broke the mold in terms of just the way things were in wrestling. This is where we are now, and I know DK, one of our resident Alliance guys, is a big fan of clear-cut lines and good guys and bad guys. But let's just be honest, we haven't had those for 30 years now. And Nick Aldis is doing, in my opinion, one of the best jobs I've seen for someone. Again, I'm gonna now before you jump and freak out, because you and I are Adam Pearce, not only fans, but we both, Adam is a friend to both of us, and a guy that we just have the utmost respect for. Nick Aldis does have a ways to go before he can hold a card, or really anybody, in my opinion, to Adam Pearce on a microphone. But Nick Aldis is the first NWA champion, and I love Tim Storm. Don't take this as a knock against him, but he seems to be the first one since Adam to really start to traverse into mainstream, into really like pushing into the mainstream, to being a guy that you go, you know what? We're going to watch NWA because we want to see what's happening with this guy, Nick Aldis. And again, starting out, I wasn't a big fan just because I hadn't seen a lot, but having seen him progress through these television shows, watching his matches, when it's time to strap on the boots and wrestle, he can do it. When it's time to cut a promo, he can do it. And when it's time to weave a story, man, I mean, he's one of the best guys going right now, especially. Maybe not of all time, Ricky Morton, but right now, he's one of the best ones going.
I think you kind of hit the nail on the head. This has become the Nick Aldis show. Him invading Ring of Honor, and let's kind of pull this together, because I want to talk about that before we get to the show, because we do talk NWA here, hashtag talk NWA.
Yes.
And I want to point out that, when the Ring of Honor NWA relationship ended a couple months ago, before there was an NWA power, it kind of left, at least as an NWA fan, a bad taste in my mouth. I was expecting to see Nick Aldis take on either PCO or Marty Scurll or something in Madison Square Garden. What do we get? Nick Aldis calling some of the matches. That's not the same.
Yeah.
And I really feel like Ring of Honor didn't recognize the value in the National Wrestling Alliance, and that's why things kind of fell apart. We didn't get those premium matches at the premium events. I mean, most of the time, NWA title matches were regulated to, what's it called? The Honor Club matches.
Mid-card.
The tag team titles, they changed hand in a dark match. Now, I get that the relationship was over at that point, but there just was this consistency of being inconsistent with the NWA. So when you bring the Ring of Honor to center stage, now you got to remember the last time Ring of Honor was in center stage, the World's Heavyweight Championship defended the title against PJ Black. Center stage is obviously a historic building for the National Wrestling Alliance, dating back many, many years ago with Ric Flair and Sting, and the ties to that NWA World Heavyweight Championship, and of course the NWA just in Atlanta in general. It's definitely like a symbiotic relationship. It just seems like the NWA and Atlanta, Georgia, are meant to be.
Yeah.
So when Ring of Honor returned to center stage to Atlanta, Georgia, I even mockingly posted something like, New Japan is going to be running in Atlanta. Ring of Honor is running in Atlanta. I think you got them scared, Lagana. I think they're paying attention to what the NWA is doing. And lo and behold, Nick Aldis jumps out, beats the crap out of Mr. Flip Gordon, right? And then the next night breaks into the show when they're in Charlotte, which is, predominantly Flair country, Horseman country, but NWA country. The two big cities that the NWA ran last year were Charlotte and Atlanta. And here we are. The NWA is defending these territories. So to me, I'm geeked up about it. And if this becomes a war of factions, I'm good with that. If it's strictly business versus the Villains Enterprise, I'm good with that. If it's something more, I'm even happier.
Yeah, I like what you're saying, and I like the fact that we're talking about wrestling starting to cross some of the lines, promotional lines. I really think that's actually a good thing because it gives the fans something, maybe we haven't seen in like 4 decades or so with territorial type wrestling. Maybe there's a little bit of a chip on people's shoulder because, hey, this is my territory or this is my show. It's kind of fun, and to have it on a way and on a scale, because I always think of the what ifs, and like, what if the internet existed during the territory wrestling days? Things might have been totally different, and maybe we're seeing a little bit of this. And to talk of a prophecy that me and Manimal would always sit down and have philosophical wrestling discussions and try to predict the future. And one of the things we thought would be really cool to see would be to see some of these wrestling companies or even the larger companies build somewhat of a local territory with a set of wrestlers that you see somewhat in the same area. That way, it's almost like your home team in sports. We've had our spats on Twitter about the Rangers and the Angels, and it would be fun to say, what? Hey, I got my, I'm out here in Florida watching blankety blank wrestling, and you're out in California watching what you're watching. And man, how fun would that be to see, to see some of them invade each other's territories and that type of thing. And I don't know, I could see that being something that could come back now more because wrestling has such a large audience in terms of not just one wrestling promotion. It's become so global that I think opportunities are galore for people to get jobs and make a little bit of money and really make a living, as where when I broke in, it was almost like the death of the territory wrestling. That was kind of when everything started to die off. And you had, 3 main promotions that you could try to get a job with. And of course, ECW got shut down and bought out. And so then it became 2, and then 2 became 1. And, that was good for one company, but maybe it wasn't good for a lot of the rest of us.
No, probably not. The other thing I want to point out too, kind of what you were saying, if Atlanta is the NWA territory, you got New Japan coming there soon. And especially these New Japan shows it's not the same, but it is the same. They're calling it New Japan USA. So there are bringing talent from Japan, but it's also kind of a bigger emphasis on some of the young lions that have been training in the LA dojo. So it'll be interesting to see what comes of that. And of course, we'll talk a little bit later about the match that has been spawned by all this, but ultimately I'm on board. This is kind of like, you wouldn't see the WWE invade WCW. We wouldn't see that. It just wasn't going to happen. Yeah. And, Billy Corgan, Dave Lagana have said since day one that they're open for business, that they're willing to work with just about everybody. And even when Lagana was on the podcast with me, he made sure to reference that, hey, they're willing to work with anybody. They even pointed out at the time, All Elite Wrestling, that show, All In, featured so many talents from around the globe, not just Ring of Honor talent, not just talent from Mexico, not just talent from Japan, not just indie darlings, but like everybody, the NWA, the Impact Wrestling. There were so many different people involved that put that show on. And he Lagana kind of mentioned, like, why aren't we all still working together now? And my quick answer was got an ego, but we'll see what happens here with the Ring of Honor NWA relationship. I'm looking forward to it. We do have a match we'll talk about in a little bit for Hard Times. It's the first match announced for the show. But going to our favorite night of the week, Tuesday nights, we kick off Power with brother, with a couple of your favorites. I'm talking about Ricky and Robert. At this point, like I said, I always like to keep track of who's watching the show at this time. 5,400 people are watching. It's pretty decent. The show kicks off. Got 5,400 people watching live. Something that caught me off guard is Ricky Morton says he's working to feed his kids.
Oh man, you talk about a brother promo. That was a brother promo if I ever heard one. Is he talking about his great grandkids or is he talking about his kids? Like, are your kids not grown? Like, do they not have jobs yet? I mean, for God's sake.
And the way I thought about it, I was like, hey, Ricky, tell your 30-year-old kid to get off the couch and go get a job. They're hiring.
Stop playing PlayStation in Ricky's
right. They're
basement.
hiring at the Golden Corral. Go get a job, brother.
Yeah, that promo made me laugh. I laughed. And again, we're probably going to have a redundant theme for the rest of these TV tapings because of maybe what we've discussed in prior episodes about just, it's not about disrespect for older wrestlers and we don't respect them. But we'll talk about the main event tonight, or our main event from this show tonight. And again, I'm gonna have some words, and I'm not gonna pull punches on it, because in-ring work is my specialty. It was my specialty as a wrestler. It's something I've always thought was was something that makes me watch wrestling even today. And it's something I think that the National Wrestling Alliance needs to take seriously if they want to see growth from their audience and they want to see growth in their company, because it still is wrestling.
Wrestling is on the marquee. So
sure.
With that bit of a promo, just a few minutes later, we got Starks, our man.
My man. Ricky Starks.
Absolutely, Ricky Starks. We're not going to call him the other name because I Googled it and you don't want to know. And at this point, we have 6,357 people watching live in the chat, and everyone's going crazy talking about everything else. And we got outlandish Zicky Dice, and they confront each other prior to the Dawson's matchup. And what I found interesting about this is, number one, Ricky Starks is just he's a natural. It was very easy for him.
Can we take a moment of silence right here for us?
Yeah.
Did you hear that? Pop the top. Cheers to Ricky Starks. I raised a can of sparkling water.
Is it
just in case?
Is it bubbly?
LaCroix. Oh. It's bubbly. I'm popped the bubbly, raising my can to Ricky Starks, and if all is going well, I do believe Ricky Starks will be joining our show next week.
Awesome. And now,
now
at the rate that I'm editing these videos, it'll probably be February before it airs, but we're working diligently to try to get this to happen. It's funny because I had my bubbly can of cherry, carbonated water here, so I thought that was kind of funny.
Yes. Same here. Cheers, brother.
So we get the confrontation. Again, Ricky Starks is just, I think he's really killing it. it was with good reason that Nick Aldis called him the chosen one, the number one draft pick, whatever you want to say, because I do believe that the future of the NWA is resting safely in the hands of Ricky Starks. Zicky Dice, outlandish, strange dude, definitely kept that up. I heard someone say he reminds me of Jimmy Garvin.
Oh, hey, that's actually not a bad comparison. Maybe if he gave me a call for a little personal training, we could trim a little bit of fat. If we got a little fat off of him, got the abs poking out a little bit. I really think Zicky Dice could be the caliber of a Jimmy Garvin. And I'm not kidding. I'm not saying that to be nice. I mean, I've been a little bit critical of him, but really I'm more critical of that. More of his appearance, his in-ring shape than I am of his zest and his zeal, his excitement, his vigor, and then also his willingness to go get it. So again, I'm not a hater. Like I said, I can see a little bit of the Jimmy Garvin there. Where now he just needs the ring valet, which I honestly think would be a great addition to Zicky Dice. Yeah, I think he's more needing. He would be more needing of the valet than the guy, the wild card guy. Yeah, I think that would be a good addition to if you were to say, Kevin, if you were booking Zicky Dice, what would you do? I would certainly have either an enforcer or somebody of that nature, because again, it would drive a lot of irritation to see him win matches by hook or by crook, especially with his promo style, with his look. But in this exchange, I thought it was a good promo. It was a fun promo. I felt like Zicky Dice held his own, but I really, Ricky on the mic, man. I just, the more we can get of Starks on the mic, the better he's going to get. And so the more entertained we're going to be. And again, in baseball, we always talk about 5-tool players. In wrestling, I don't know if it's 5, but I know that it's, promos, likability, in-ring work, and the way you look are major things. And again, Ricky's not lacking in any of those things. It's just a matter of time. And I would love to see him pull out this television title tournament. That's my hope. That's my pick. That's who I'm going with.
A wise man, Jim Rome, once said, "More of me, less of you is a good thing. More Ricky Starks, less of everything else is a good thing." So that was cool. Then we get the Dawson's confrontation. Galley calls them twins. I find it very hard to believe that they're twins. I could be mistaken. They don't really bear a resemblance except for that they're both heavier set guys, about the same height and the same weight, that have beards. One of them is bald as all day. Zayn starts working with that injured hand that we remember the wild card injured a few weeks back when they were trying to sing like canaries to anyone who would listen. And honestly, these brothers aren't taking it lightly. They're both out there trying to win this match, which kind of made me happy. It made me happy in that they're putting such a value on the TV title that their tag team, their brothership, that could all be over. I mean, they were literally, you had Dave going after Zayn's bad hand, like literally trying to re-injure the hand to get the victory. And these guys are supposed to be brothers. The great thing, the way they ended the match is Zayn does the whole karate chop on Dave's head with the iron hand, the cast.
Whoa. Karate.
Oh my! Well, see, that's only for Mongrovians, right?
I saw my chance.
Hey, good on you, brother. So that was the end of that match. Again, Zayn advances. He still has an injured hand. Will he be cleared to wrestle at the pay-per-view? That remains to be seen. The interesting thing is that what I guess I wasn't aware of, I wasn't paying attention up until this point, is that there's 2 mystery spots in this tournament. And they said that these 2 contestants could be filled by anybody, even guys not on the roster, which I think is an open invitation to Ring of Honor competitors who may or may not be at in Atlanta, Georgia, at the Public Broadcasting Studios on the 14th. Wait, is that right? No, not the 14th. The 24th. Excuse me.
24th.
So I thought that was really interesting too. Next up, now we're at over 7,000 people watching live. Now we're starting to trend to that number where the show live viewers, this is about where it taps out, between 7,000 and 8,000 people watching. So I think it's pretty cool that, they're not even halfway through the show and we've got 7,000 people watching. That means people got in early, and these numbers are double what they did on New Year's Day. These numbers are double what they did on Christmas Eve. So the people are watching, and what they're watching next is Melina and Ashley Vox. Now,
I'm gonna. Do you mind if I jump in?
Go right ahead, sir.
I didn't get to comment on the Dawson brothers match, and I'm not going to because it really just did.
Oh, I'm so sorry.
No offense, no offense, guy. I mean, no offense, guy. It's an intriguing match. I liked the story, but the in-ring work was just not the caliber of what we need for this show to make people go, the NWA is a place to be. And again, I know we're growing, but it just wasn't up to par with some of the stuff that we see later in the show and actually this match. Now, I know I'm a big Melina critic. Her first match, I kind of felt like I was watching an indie train wreck. But it's just being honest. But again, you know me, I'm not taking personal shots at anybody, even Ricky Morton. But I felt like Melina in this match was, I felt like aside from Thunder Rosa, I felt like this was the best female one-on-one performance besides what I've seen from Thunder Rosa pretty much every week. I thought Melina was outstanding. And again, like I said, I'm not a big fan. I'm certainly not a big fan of some of the things she says on Twitter. And this tells you that it has nothing to do with my personal opinion. But I thought this was for her, it was a great recovery to say, hey, look, she didn't look bad in terms of her in-ring moves. She was solid. Everything was very snug and very in there. I thought Ashley Vox looked like she got kind of ate up by Melina, which is good. You need that. When somebody's really good and you're not there, you deserve to get eaten alive. And I thought Melina kind of ate her up. And to see that was good. I think it solidified Melina right where it seems like they're jockeying her for in that top 3 contendership for the women's championship. And like I said about Sienna,
Allison Kay.
Gosh, why can't I think of her? Allison Kay. Like I said about her before, it just feels like she's a placeholder of the title because she doesn't wrestle matches really. And then she comes out in promos like this and gets kind of made look stupid. And I don't think that's her fault. I think it's more about the way that they're using her. And so not really, maybe it's a kind of a head scratcher situation, but I thought Melina looked very strong in this match.
So now let me give a history lesson because I've been told that's one of the fun parts of the NWA pre-party is when J. Cal goes on a rant about stuff from the past. So without further ado, Melina is a product of a wrestling school out here in Southern California. The Empire Wrestling Federation, the School of Hard Knocks. Jesse Hernandez, who is a longtime wrestling personality, was a wrestler, wrestled for the AWA, especially when they came out here to Southern California, was part of the the original NWA Hollywood or the World Wrestling All-Stars, basically the LaBelle promotion. And when he started his own wrestling promotion in the late 90s, he found a lot of talent. Rocky Romero got his start at the School of Hard Knocks. Frankie Kazarian did some training at the School of Hard Knocks. Christopher Daniels spent some time with EWF in the School of Hard Knocks. TJ Perkins. A lot of these names are kind of like a who's who. Scorpio Sky. Joey Ryan. A lot of these guys came from the School of Hard Knocks. Shelly Martinez. Some of you guys know from... it's been a minute since she's been on TV, but she was in the ECW. Gosh, I forgot her name, but she was the vampire girl. The WWE ECW. Yeah. But Melina came from the School of Hard Knocks, and she was actually a very sought-after talent, and she got signed to the WWE relatively early in her training, in her career. And when she came up, of course, you learn the different styles of wrestling. When you go to, at the time, it was Ohio Valley. Now we call it NXT. She went to Ohio Valley and learned how the WWE does things. and that's how she learned, their style of wrestling. And let's be honest, she had a pretty successful career with the WWE. She was a Divas champion, and that's commendable. I mean, that was top of the food chain for the WWE. Something happened along the way. She fell out of favor with wrestling, or wrestling fell out of favor with her. I'm not exactly sure. And I felt up until this moment, she was just going through the motions, resting on the laurels of being a women's champion for the WWE. You were right. She brought it. She looked really good. I'm not going to say great. I'm not even going to put her at the same level as Thunder Rosa or Allison Kay, but this was a great match for her, and to make that claim that she deserves a shot at Allison Kay. So I was very happy with it. And like I said, she makes her case to get a shot at Allison Kay and the world title. Allison Kay comes out and says, "Hey, I'm ready to go now." And Melina backtracks a little bit and says, Whoa. I meant next week. I actually said next week. You're not even out here ready to wrestle. Let's do it next week. So I think next week will be the first time we see that women's championship defended on NWA Power. And we're going to get kind of a marquee matchup with names. We have Allison Kay, your NWA women's champion. And now we have a former WWE women's champion, Melina. They've kind of built it up the right way. I would have liked to have seen a lot more of Allison Kay leading up to this. But in the meantime, this is the match we got. So for next week, we will actually have a women's championship match, unless this is some sort of bait and switch thing, which, I haven't read the spoilers, so I wouldn't be surprised if it is. But who knows?
Well, I'm excited to see, because it is pitting two wrestlers either at or right past their prime. And so, again, we're not 20 years, 30 years, we're not 2 decades past when they were relevant and when they were in their prime. And so I think that's going to be a fun match to watch. Again, I don't trust the NWA to give that to me. Let's just be perfectly, being perfectly transparent. I don't trust that they're going to actually give me that match. So if they do, I will be pleasantly surprised. And if they give me more than just 3 or 4 minutes before, all the women come running out and we have a big schmoz, or maybe we have a big conversation like we did with the men that one time, it would shock me. It would be fun to see that, though, because it's not faux pas these days. And again, I know it's a throwback, and we've discussed this, but maybe if your first time listening, I understand that this show is a throwback, but not everything about the show has to be what it was in the 80s. And again, I think what we're getting in the ring needs to be up to date, because the athleticism and the capabilities of wrestlers in this current day and age is definitely more than what it was back then. And, you can argue with me all day, but I'm going to win. Than it was, in the 80s. So I'm all for the storytelling, but I'm also all for giving me the high quality work rate that the wrestler, because it'd be one thing if these wrestlers couldn't. That'd be one thing. Like I've booked shows where we didn't have a whole lot of talent, and we had to do what I call Paul Heyman booking, where you're doing everything you can to cover the weaknesses of your wrestlers, and show their strengths. And I mean, I've had singles matches turn into tag matches, turn into battle royals, turn into women's heavyweight championship match. You got to do what you got to do when you have no talent, and I get it, or very limited talent. That's not the NWA. A lot of these wrestlers are some of your better workers in today's day and age, and so we really need to see some of that. And so I hope we can get a little bit of that in this women's match, because it is an era where women's wrestling really is one of the biggest things going. Why not play to your strengths in a situation?
Can I put one more punctuation mark on this? And that's an exclamation point. And I want to say this is 2 weeks in a row, back to back, that we had a very good women's wrestling match. And when this show first started, I didn't think that was going to ever be a reality. Bottom line, they are putting on good wrestling matches. Are they great? No. But Last week we had Thunder Rosas and ODB. This week we have Ashley Vox and Melina. My hat's off to the NWA. I applaud them.
Way to go. And hats off to the women
absolutely.
as well.
No disrespect intended. You do have to tip your hat to the performers in the ring, the wrestlers. They're the ones that are actually putting their bodies on the line and putting on these matches. And so far they've delivered 2 weeks in a row. And I'm looking forward to next week, and hopefully the trend continues. So at this point, we're at 7,618 people watching the show. And again, I just point that out because I think there's something very interesting about everyone piling into this YouTube channel to watch this show. Kev, I'm not sure when you watch the show. I watch it live, but you have the opportunity to watch it anytime you want. I mean, you could literally be watching the show 5 minutes before this podcast starts, and we could still be talking about the show, or you could watch it the day of or whenever. But there's over 7,500 people in one chat room, one channel watching this. And I think that's pretty interesting. And it kind of feels like there's a little bit of camaraderie with the fans watching it. I mean, I don't really get too invested because I'm not in there to chat with people. I'm there to kind of take notes and enjoy the program. But I do see a lot of communication, and people say, "Oh, hey, Gary, how you doing?" Or, "Hey, Elder Sauer, what's going on?" So I think it's really cool that these, week after week, people are getting camaraderie out of this. And I think that kind of...
Yeah, tuning in, they're watching, they're having a good time. Right. That's what wrestling is all about.
And speaking of a good time, we get the clips of Nick Aldis invading Ring of Honor. Of course, he's wearing some sort of security shirt. He jumps in the ring after Bandito versus Flip Gordon. He takes liberties with the kid, throws him into the turnbuckle, rips off the shirt, revealing the very cool NWA shirt. In fact, the NWA sent me that shirt, and I've worn it a few times on this podcast. Then we get a little bit of behind the scenes with this. And at first, when they kept advertising we're going to show what happened at the Ring of Honor invasion, I kind of felt like it was going to be like this whole Great Muta thing all over again, where they're going to just show the same clips we already saw and just do a lot of hem and hawing about it. But we actually got a few promos out of the champion talking about running in his area, that Atlanta is the NWA's territory. And after he threw Flip Gordon into the turnbuckle, or not even the turnbuckle, but the corner post in Atlanta on Saturday night, and then on Sunday night kicking off the show, interrupting the show, and the villains came out. And I promise you this, if Brody King and Latimer get into a match, I'm going to be all eyes on that one, because I think Brody King will eat Thomas Latimer's lunch. I think he's going to wreck him. I thought he was going to wreck him there, and they got into a shoving match. And then Flip Gordon kind of put his hand on Aldis, which was a no-no, and now Aldis says that he will be wrestling Flip Gordon at the pay-per-view. One thing I've noticed, or actually two things, is number one, they don't refer to this as a world's title match. So this, I think, will be the first NWA pay-per-view that doesn't feature a world's heavyweight championship match. The significance of that, I think, is kind of important because it kind of lends a greater emphasis on the TV title tournament. At least, I would imagine. The second thing is these two have already faced off before. They faced off in Ring of Honor before All In. In fact, that was Nick Aldis' first title defense in Ring of Honor, and of course, Nick was successful. So I think it'll be an interesting match for the pay-per-view. Wasn't the match anyone was hoping for. The posters were a little bit misleading. On the poster, we had Tim Storm, and we had Nick Aldis, and we had Camille, and it kind of thought maybe we're going to get that title match. On another poster, we have a barrage of wrestlers, but ultimately, we didn't get Nick Aldis versus Marty Scurll. We didn't get Nick Aldis versus Tim Storm. We don't even have Nick Aldis in a world title match. What are your thoughts on that, Kevin?
I would say it's still early in terms of if for some reason they're smarter than we think they are, which this could be a good situation where this can unfold a little more, because the most important thing that you have happen is you get Flip Gordon's name on the
Right.
poster, or however you
Sure.
want to put it. Is get the fact that, hey, we've got somebody, we've got an interpromotional thing going on here. That's probably why it's not a
Right.
title match. And it does lend itself to creating like an environment that, this might be something bigger. And so I can get behind that. I'm not going to count Marty Scurll out of it totally yet, because of the fact that the Villains Inc. was involved in the skirmish. So we may be looking at more than one of these guys coming into it, getting involved in this. And interestingly enough, that would be a good way to do it. This is a good way to start, is to, put your marquee match out there, put your top guy, and show that this whole Ring of Honor interaction wasn't just a publicity stunt. It actually is going to manifest in something. Yes. So it's pretty good. And I would like to see Marty Scurll be involved. I can't imagine why he'd show up at the last one and not be involved in this one. And who knows where that could lead. Could he be in the TV title tournament? Probably not. but would it not be great? I mean, that'd be fun to see. I mean, what kind of TV title main event would it be if we have Ricky Starks and Marty Scurll?
I think that would be fantastic. And you're right.
You're blowing the roof
You're
off,
right. That probably won't happen. It probably won't happen. As I stare directly into the camera, it probably won't happen. But I genuinely think if that match were to happen, a lot of people would be paying attention to what the NWA is doing. And could you imagine if Marty Scurll were to win that title, the lengths that Ricky Starks would have to go to get a rematch? Maybe Ricky Starks invades Ring of Honor. Maybe a Ricky Starks Marty Scurll feud kicks off. Maybe even a Marty Scurll, or a Ricky Starks and Flip Gordon feud, which would be very interesting as well. You never know.
Let me interject something else too here. Let me play Booker for a minute, and if anybody at the NWA is listening, I'm not cheap, but I'm not expensive. So think of it like this: you're trying to build a brand right now, and a guy like Ricky Starks is a guy that you really could say, we are the company that saw this, and we did what it took to take him from here to here. Very much like Nick Aldis. Not that Nick Aldis wasn't a big name or didn't have a name before, but I really believe he's creating as much hubbub right now as any other wrestler at his level. And so I think it would be a brilliant thing to really build Ricky Starks or the television champion in general. But a guy like Ricky would be a great person to own in on, because of the fact that you want to be able to build stars in your company, and you want to build them from the ground up, and you want to build them from like hometown guys, guys. And I see Nick Aldis as an NWA. He's one of their guys. I'm not sure if I'm buying in Aaron Stevens as one of their guys. And this would be something that I could, again, when we're talking about talent development, when we're talking about developing a brand, and we're talking about, who you're going to build your brand on, at some point, your guys have to have good runs, respectable runs, and beat some really respectable names in order to solidify themselves as a legitimate star wrestling for a legitimate brand. So this is why I really think it would be valuable to them for one of these out of the wrestling, out of NWA guys to get to the finals. Now, other people might see this as, oh, well, this is them. They're not doing their brand justice, or, their guys have paid dues and they've been on the television show. But in the end, what you're doing is you're giving them credibility too, because the champion and the belt that they were vying for has been lended more credibility. So it gives all of them credibility. So it is a big picture kind of thing. So don't give me that whole, it's wrong for the boys kind of crap, because if that was the case, that died a long time. That conversation died a long time
Right.
ago. I don't even know if it ever lived, because even before, I mean, the boys have been getting abused since before I was born. So, don't give me
Yeah.
that. Do what's best for the brand. And I think what would be best for the brand is to have a legitimate name, to have the champion beat somebody that has a good name, and really kind of solidify, hey, I'm the champ. This championship means something, so on and so forth.
So next up, we get the Pope. The Pope is out there with the Outlaws, Homicide, and Eddie Kingston. And the Pope is talking these guys up. And he uses the key phrase, I'm looking for my superpowers. I'm looking for my 4 horsemen. So far, Pope's doing a lot of talking, not a lot of action. And what's the old adage? Think like a man of action, act like a man of thought. The Pope is certainly saying many things, but not really doing many things at this point. We've got nearly 8,000 people watching the show, and we get Aaron Stevens, and we get the question mark, as they said in the last week's show, that they want to win all the gold. Well, this is the first step for them to capturing the tag team championships by beating a pretty good tag team in the Outlaws. One of the things that I noticed, and I'm sure you did as well, I mean, they pointed it out, Homicide had the orange tape on his shoulder. Again, remember weeks back, Joe Galley asked Eddie Kingston, where's Homicide? And he said, oh, Homicide's hurt, and didn't want to talk anything more about it. In fact, actually kind of bullied Galley into shutting up about it. And here we have Homicide, who's being held together by bubblegum and scotch tape, and that shoulder just doesn't hold up in this match. I will say this. I thought the prodigal son of Monrovia and the third degree national champion worked very well together. Like, really well. Like, this wasn't their first rodeo, but it really was, as a tag team in the ring together. Stevens was targeting the shoulder throughout the whole match. Let's see. I'm looking at my notes here. The karate must have included submission wrestling, because we see Aaron Stevens, the shooter, using more moves that kind of are more familiar with Brazilian jiu-jitsu than we do karate. But of course, Homicide has the injured shoulder. We get some shenanigans when, that chop, that throat thrust, that Mongrovian chop to Eddie Kingston basically makes him swallow his own tongue. And the match is basically ends with that, with Stevens getting the pin, and Homicide's hurt. He looks hurt. He wrestled hurt, and the Pope walks out on these guys. He was just hyping them up before the match, and he's like, "Well, turns out here my work is done." So maybe the superpowers he was actually looking at are the third degree national champion and the prodigal son of Monrovia.
Hey, he first of all, he turned heel. Let's just call it what it is. That's about as heel of a move as you're ever going to get, is someone who's been supporting you, and then you walk out on them. So I'm going to go out on a limb and say that you're going to see him end up with a heel team at this point. That's just my opinion. And so I feel like you're going to see Pope as a heel and with a heel team, probably with a little bit of comedy attached to it. But what do you think? You think this is a heel move for Pope?
I'm not entirely sure, because again, we live in this world, this gray area in the NWA, and it's so hard to kind of really tell what's what. I mean, up until about 2 or 3 weeks ago, we thought Nick Aldis might be the babyface of this company. Up until about 2 or 3 weeks ago, we had what appeared to be Eli Drake kind of manipulating the situation, until a few weeks ago we had Ken Anderson and Colt Cabana were best friends, and until a few weeks ago, hey, James Storm was the bad guy. So it's kind of hard to tell you for sure what's going to happen. But ultimately, yeah, I wouldn't be surprised if the Pope showed up with the heel tag team. And then I would be surprised if the Pope shows up with a bunch of babies. Either way, I think one thing is for certain. The Pope is entertaining. He could cut a nice promo, and there are teams out there that could benefit from having a manager like the Pope in their corner and use a mouthpiece. So, as long as they don't put him with the Dawsons, I'm looking forward to seeing what comes next from the Pope. And that's
I agree.
That's something we missed that I wanted to talk about earlier, and I guess I didn't. I guess I didn't write it down, but the whole promo between Ken Anderson and Colt Boom Boom Cabana, and one thing that Ken Anderson kept saying is, "Why would I be bitter? Why would I be bitter? Why would I be bitter?" And it's kind of reminded me of that expression when someone says, "Well, no disrespect intended, but now I'm going to disrespect you." I feel like the whole time he was saying, "Why should I be offended?" Or "Why should I be what's the word he used again? I'm sorry. Why should I be bitter? Why do you think I'm bitter?" Because everything you do are the actions of a guy who's bitter. So I wanted to just point that out because I do believe that that's going to spill into the ring at some point. We are going to see a Colt Cabana, Ken Anderson feud. It seems like it's undeniable at this point. And I didn't acknowledge that earlier. That was before the Ashley Vox Melina match. I was just so excited to talk about that match that I entirely skipped over it.
Yeah.
But now, then we get the Austin Idol commercial, and again, those are very cringy to me. I still don't really understand why. If they were using Austin Idol as a mouthpiece for somebody, okay. Like, he was initially the manager of Nick Aldis when the Aldis Crusade kicked off. They put the two together, and I think they quickly realized that Aldis wasn't in need of someone to do the talking for him. And so what they're going to do with Austin Idol in the meantime, I have no idea, but the commercial is, at least it wasn't the kayfabe cocktails, which have left me feeling very uncomfortable. At least they smartened up and got rid of those. We're at 8,057 people watching the show right now, and we get Strictly Business with Holler If You Hear Me, Big Papa Pump.
Yeah.
Oh my God.
The largest arms in the world.
Ain't so much. And then okay. Story time. J. Cal loves the history of the National Wrestling Alliance. That's probably why I'm such a big fan. That's probably why I've carried on covering the National Wrestling Alliance from 3 different ownerships. Remember, I was covering the NWA before TNA started promoting with the NWA. I was covering the NWA after TNA left. I kept covering the NWA when oh my God, not Bob Trowbridge. Help me out here. I forgot his name.
Oh, my gosh. Wow. My man,
yes, Bruce Tharp.
Gosh, why
Bruce Tharp.
Bruce Tharp. Jesus, I hope he doesn't hear this because we're supposed to be friends. I don't know if he treated a friend the way he treated me there at one point in my tenure with the NWA. But yes, Bruce Tharp.
Bruce Tharp. I covered the NWA through his ownership, and of course, I've been very happy to cover the NWA now. So when someone starts handing out misinformation about the NWA's history, it irks me. It irks me even more when it's somebody who wrestles for the NWA or currently wrestles for the NWA. And in his words, that Ted Turner bought the NWA and the NWA became WCW and he was a champion of WCW. I kind of lost where he was going, and they beeped out white trash, which I get because with everything with Jim Cornette, they're going to be overly sensitive now, which is fine. That didn't bother me at all.
Mm-hmm.
It was a typical Scott Steiner promo from about 20 years ago, during the Monday Night Wars. I was just not impressed. I wasn't impressed with the little replica tag title that he was saying was the real NWA tag title. First of all, Ted Turner bought Jim Crockett Promotions in 1991.
Okay.
Jim Crockett Promotions ceased to exist. Then it became WCW. WCW officially withdrew from the NWA in 1993. Jim Crockett Promotions was not the NWA. They were the biggest promotion in the NWA, but at the time in 1991, you had Don Owens, who was the member in the Pacific Northwest with NWA Pacific Northwest, oddly enough. There were, in Australia, you had the NWA promotion, All-Star Championship Wrestling. In Japan, there's a little promotion. You might have heard of it called New Japan Pro Wrestling. In fact,
okay.
Yeah, not a lot of people are too familiar with this place, but they were, in fact, a member of the NWA. So when Scott Steiner says something so asinine, it's like literally nails on the chalkboard. It's like listening to him do math equations. And I know it's JCal, it's a JCal thing, but holy crap, man, I wanted to just turn it off right then and there. Lucky for you guys, I have a iron will, and I watched the whole match.
Mhm.
I didn't turn it off.
Yeah.
We were at 8,657 people for the main event, the 6-man tag. Wild card and Scott Steiner. Well, who's the third man, brother? You got Gibson. You got Eli Drake, and everyone just assumed Ricky Morton was going to be the third man. Turns out it's Tim Storm. First, Kevin, before we get to the match, what were your thoughts on Professor Steiner's promo, and what do you think of Tim Storm being the third man?
Well, I think you nailed it on the head with Scott Steiner's promo. We've talked about this. I feel like it's a broken record that there are so many good wrestlers right now that are known, that people know who they are, and that you could probably get for exactly the same. If we're talking about money, probably a little bit less even than someone like a Scott Steiner. And still, and not only would you get the recognition for being relevant today, but you would also get something in the ring from them. And man, we both talked about how big of Steiner fans we were on our last episode. So it's not like we have to defend ourselves in our position, but it just, he didn't look good in the ring. He didn't sound good on the mic. It's you're playing with fire with him on the microphone, given where we are and what we've already been through with the NWA. You're playing with fire with him already. I mean, it's kind of a head scratcher thing. And I'm not, it feels very, and this is, I'm just going to say, it feels very indie is what we would say. It's kind of what we would say. It feels very indie. It feels very like Bush League-y to say, oh, we got Scott Steiner, we got to use him, or we got to, it just, I think these are the moments where I think the NWA can do better. And I loved the way they used the Russian
Nikita Koloff.
It's not what Nikita Koloff. What I keep trying to say Nikolai.
You went
Koloff.
To the other Russian.
But Nikita Koloff, yeah. But no, I really like the way they used him. I thought if you're going to use guys like that, that's the way to go about it. And having them get into the ring, it's just not good. It's just not good. Use them for recognition. Even if Scott Steiner wants to come out and be like in their corner or come out and cut one of those awful promos, but having him get up there and get in the ring was just as bad as watching Ricky and Robert out there. Watching him have trouble getting, throw a belly to belly and then have trouble getting up. I mean, to have trouble getting up off the mat. And then the announcer, Joe Galley, right? Give me a break, bro. Give me a break. He does not look good as he's ever looked. No, he doesn't. Okay? No, he doesn't. And if I'm announcing that, I'm going to tell the truth. Scott Steiner was good in his prime, but, not so good.
Well, I don't blame Galley for that. I think the term, and I'll censor myself, but you have to make chicken S with, you have to make chicken salad out of chicken S. And
Yeah.
It is what it is. Scott Steiner is a big deal for them, although you and I both agree we're on the same page here. Doesn't make sense. There are better options.
Mm-hmm.
There are cheaper options. And quite frankly, I just don't get it. Wait, I should take it back. I said cheaper options. I don't know what Scott Steiner's getting paid. Maybe he's doing this as a favor.
Sure.
Maybe he likes being there. Maybe Nick Aldis feels inclined to help him out because Nick Aldis benefited from Scott Steiner's friendship in Impact Wrestling. I genuinely don't know, and I genuinely don't care. Scott Steiner in 2020 on my TV is garbage, just like Ricky Morton, just like Robert Gibson. And we sit here. So I do a live stream every week before NWA Power. And you know what guys were asking for on that show? Hey, can we see Dan the Beast Severn? I'd like to see Dan the Beast Severn get a shot at the NWA World's Heavyweight Championship. Now, two things. Dan Severn was a great NWA World Champion. I firmly believe that. He did many things to help keep the NWA going and really help the NWA survive in a very, very dark time for the National Wrestling Alliance. Dan Severn's 61 years old, guys. I don't need to see him in the ring anymore. Now, if you, again, there are ways to use these guys in a way that's not offensive. There are ways that they can do it, and you've pointed them out time and time again. It certainly isn't in a 60-minute Broadway for any reason ever, whether it be any championship. It just shouldn't happen. So, forgive me for saying this, but Scott Steiner needs to go. Ricky and Robert need to go. I'm done with these guys. And I love this show. I watch this show every week, but I'm done with these guys. And the worst thing in the world is you put Eli Drake in the middle of this match with Thomas Latimer and Royce I6. And you know what? I'm giving Tim Storm a pass because Tim Storm still functions in the ring like a wrestler. If you didn't tell me that Tim Storm was in his 52 years of age or 53, whatever it is, no disrespect to him, I don't honestly know. I wouldn't know that that's how old he is because he gets in there and he can wrestle. Is he the most spry guy in the ring? No. But he could throw a clothesline and a body slam and a neck drop and get up without any problems.
Get up off the
mat.
Right.
So the match itself was, I mean, look, they did pretty well with hiding some of this stuff, but Steiner in the ring was just garbage time for me. Even Gibson looked pretty decent in this match because they kind of limited his time in the ring. Obviously, Eli Drake shined in this match.
Yep.
Of course, what else is he going to do? It's Eli Drake. Of course, he's going to shine in the ring. Tim Storm looked good in this match. I don't know if you could see it too, but because the camera panned out, I guess they didn't get a good shot on it. But Camille went to spear. I think it was Storm, and he sidestepped her, or maybe it was actually I think it was Drake. She went to spear him, and he sidestepped her, and she went right into the stairs. The ring stairs. So you hear this loud thud, and you see this like platinum blonde hair flying. And to me, I kind of popped for that because, haha, you missed, number one, and number two. It gave the opportunity for Eli Drake to get in there, hit his finishing move on I6, and then Gibson gets the roll-up pin on him. So unfortunately, we will see Ricky Morton challenge for the NWA World's Heavyweight Championship. Again, I'm excited because the title is going to be defended. I'm very unexcited by who's challenging for it. We get Morton and Aldis. Morton's going to try to grab that brass ring one more time, brother. He's got to feed his kids. And and
got to feed his grandkids.
His great grandkids. And we got to make sure his teeth don't fall out during the match. So
gotta get some new dental. Oh man, I'm sorry, but I can't help it.
Overall,
Oh,
I'm sorry. Share your thoughts on the match. I kind of skipped over. I don't mean to be like that. Just real excited to talk about wrestling. You can tell.
No, it's fine. And if anybody at the NWA is listening, you've got to produce main events that don't just go They don't just go, oh, they don't go where you don't go, oh, it would be cool if.
Yeah.
Those kind of that thought process in wrestling is a bad thought
Dangerous
process.
is the word.
What you should be saying is, it would be cool if blank, as long as it's credible. Okay? But this kind of main event on a show where you're trying to be considered, the best version of the NWA ever type conversation, like we're having that conversation. You can't have conversations like that with matches like this as your main event. You just can't. It is what it is. And that doesn't mean, again, we're supporters of the show. We're taking time out of our lives to cover it and watch it and support it. So don't give me that you're a hater or any of that crap. It's just the truth. And again, I'm not. I've said it, and I've defended myself enough that I don't hate the Rock and Roll Express, but I just don't see them as main event wrestlers in today's day and age. And you've got a good roster of talent that could easily carry a main event all up and down, even the limited roster that they have, that would have belonged a lot better in that match. And again, we can throw out name after name of guys or girls even that are on the roster that would have fit better in that main event than Robert Gibson and Scott Steiner. Those guys can be out there, they can cut promos, but for God's sakes, don't put them in the ring wrestling, and don't have really credible wrestlers out there doing jobs to them, taking bumps for them. It just looks dumb.
And to put add to that point, echo your sentiment. Let's think about this show over the course of 14 episodes now. You had the wild card come in as your tag team champions. A wild card went to the Crockett Cup, won a battle royal to get into the Crockett Cup, defeated the War Kings in the first round. The War Kings, Jack Staines and Crimson. Those were the odds-on favorite to win the thing, right? So they beat the odds-on favorite, ended up losing to PCO and Brody King. Well, let's be honest. What PCO is doing in Ring of Honor is nothing short of amazing. Again, an older worker who could still work. And then Brody King, who is like a protege, not a protege, a prodigy is what I meant to say, came out of the Santino Brothers school here in Southern California. Joey Chaos, I'm sure you remember his name, helped develop this guy, and he's amazing. He can move around the ring like a luchador. So these two guys win the tag titles. It's no slap in the face to Latimer and Isaacs to lose to these guys. But Isaacs and Latimer are the guys to win those titles back, and they bring them to NWA Power. And we're excited because, this is a new era for the NWA. And they lose the titles to guys who were past their prime 15, 20, 30 years ago. Right. And not only did they lose the titles to them, which could have been a fluke, but then they lost again, trying to regain the titles. So what credibility at this point do Latimer and Isaacs have as a tag team? Let's be real. They lost twice. That means that they're done. As far as I'm concerned, they shouldn't wrestle the Rock and Roll Express again. And if they're the cream of the top, that's what you brought to the table, and they're not even capable of defeating guys who have AARP cards. What are we doing, man? Yeah. What are we doing?
Yeah.
The tag team division is probably the weakest part of the NWA right now.
I cannot disagree with you on
that. And the Rock and Roll Express are it. They're the paramount. They're the pinnacle. That's the zenith of tag team wrestling.
You got. I mean, you're gonna have me quiet on this because I tend to catch on to things a little bit before everybody else. So when I bring those things to light, a lot of times I get the whole quagmire kind of dog looking at a TV after it's turned off response from people. You turn a TV off and a dog kind of, huh? I'll say these things, and people kind of look at me like, oh my gosh. And I know when I first started talking about the Rock and Roll Express, anybody that followed my career in the National Wrestling Alliance knows how unhappy I was with Ricky Morton holding the NWA World Junior Heavyweight title. And I got a lot of flack for saying that, it's a disgrace then. And then I come around and it's, 5 years later? and now the same thing is happening, and I feel exactly the same way. And it's not Ricky Morton. It's just my feeling on older wrestlers holding major titles. And so, again, maybe I sound like a broken record, but I do remember the pushback I got from the Alliance guys when I brought it up the first time. But now it's coming. It's starting to make sense.
Well, and I was the chief guy there pushing back on it, because I was in the audience, and it got a pop, and I sensed that at that moment it was not going to be a long-term thing. If you would have told me then, hey, these guys are going to be around for the next 8 weeks of television, I'd have said, why? I think you got the mileage out of them you did when they won the tag titles. It was a feel-good moment. At the time, it wasn't to send Jim Cornette off, but it ended up being the moment that sent Jim Cornette off. That was it. Deal's done. Why are we still doing this? And I even pushed back to you because I said, well, what about Flair past his prime? What about Zbyszko? What about Roddy Piper, always coming back, all these guys who always came back, Terry Funk. But man, this is, these guys are 64 years old, 63 years old, or 61, whatever it is. Doesn't really matter. The fact of the matter is they're 30 years past their prime. So
yeah,
I don't like to end the show on a downer, but man, it's a downer. I don't want to see Nick Aldis. Hey, don't throw things, man. I don't want to see. I honestly don't want to see this match. I'm not looking forward to it. I'm gonna watch it because that's what I do, but I'm not looking forward to it.
Sure.
There's about a dozen guys on the roster, like you said, who I'd rather see in that spot. Why are we still avoiding Eli Drake like he's the plague? He's not a black hole of charisma. Why? James Storm. I'd rather see a ring match with James Storm than this. I would rather see. Ricky Starks get a full match. I'd rather see Trevor Murdoch get a match. Hell, I'd rather see the question mark get a shot.
Yeah.
Or Colt Cabana. I'll even take Ken Anderson, because honestly, at least he can move in the ring without falling down and having difficulty getting back up.
I'm laughing just because I can't. It's just this is where we are. I would let me give you some fantasy booking.
Let's take it,
which would be fun. This is always fun for me because no one's gonna listen to me, but you'd be smart if you did, because you might make some fans happy. But man, I would love to see Nick Aldis and his crew wipe the mat with these guys, injure them, put them out for good, get those tag titles held up, and let's have the top two contenders fight for it and get the Rock and Roll Express out of here. I know it ain't gonna happen, but if you turn the book over to me, that's the first thing that would happen. And as many people would be mad about it, at least we could have some really good, some solid in-ring stuff. I don't get it. I'm not gonna get it. I hope wrestling moves on past this kind of thing.
Yeah, look, and we're in 2020, and I get these are the tapings that happened back in December. So technically this is still 2019, I guess. But in 2020, I want all these tropes to just I'm not gonna use the word die because I don't want to be insensitive, but I wish they would go away. There's plenty of young talent out there. Hopefully with this new relationship with Ring of Honor, I'm very optimistic that we're going to see an influx of talent, because again, there's only 3 nights a week that the NWA is taping, the pay-per-view and 2 nights of TV. And that's a very low commitment to get a lot of exciting wrestling on 2 different stations. Your Sinclair broadcasting with Ring of Honor and then your NWA on YouTube. It sure would be a great way to spread out some talent in a positive way. So I'm optimistic. It's 2020. It's a new year, new me, new NWA. Hopefully, we see something better than this. Because look, we've highlighted so many positives. Strictly Business is money. Nick Aldis, money. Eli Drake, money. There's a lot of good. Ricky Starks, money. A lot of good things happening in the NWA. I'm gonna even say Aaron Stevens, money. But there's
all these guys you're naming are great.
But
don't get me wrong.
But there's got to be a time where this stuff finds its way off television, and we could still have comedy. I'm okay with the goofy and the silly. I'm okay with that as long as there's a time for the business, as long as there's time for the wrestling, and as long as it's not wrestlers who are 30 years past their prime.
Yep.
The floor. Well, the floor is yours, Kev. Let's wrap the show up. What else do you want to say before we say goodbye?
I just want to thank all the listeners, people that come on and listen to what we have to say.
Thank you, guys.
We really do this. Yeah, we do this for fun, and hopefully that comes through in our delivery. We're not trying to become famous or any of that nature. We just love wrestling, and we love the NWA, and we love to get to come on and just talk some wrestling 1 or 2 times a week. And so we're just grateful for anybody that does listen. I just want to thank everybody for tuning in and giving us some of your time.
Absolutely. Again, the Alliance blog is for the fans. There's no corporate sponsors here. Nobody from the office is giving me a phone call telling me, hey, talk about this, or hey, book this guy, or have this guy come on your show. I don't even, up until recently, the NWA wasn't even following me on Twitter. So this is for you guys. Don't get me wrong. Kevin and I love talking wrestling, and we would do this whether the camera was recording or not. But we welcome you guys here into the studio. You're watching this, and we're just talking wrestling. So, Kevin, where can they find you online if they want to give you a follow or watch some of your old matches? How can they find you?
Well, ironically enough, we were running through some old matches of mine just last night on a group chat. You can go find any of my matches and some of the links to some of my matches on different YouTube channels on Kevin Douglas 247 on YouTube. There's some of my Championship Wrestling from Hollywood matches are going to be on there. So that's a good place if you want to see me actually wrestle and see that I actually did some things. As far as just my current social media on Twitter, you can find me at my shoot name, brother, Kevin Lee Frazier, all one word on Twitter. That's FRAZIER, and on Instagram. I promise I'll be getting a little more involved with social media as time goes on. It's just from getting married to moving to going to school. Believe it or not, social media, doesn't rule my life. So, but I do update things, and I do try to be an inspiration to people. And I always leave my inbox open for anybody, struggling, especially wrestlers that may be struggling with any kind of drug addiction. I've dealt with that, overcame it. The hard transition from wrestling to regular life. If you decide to ever do that, some wrestlers don't. No names need to be mentioned. I'm here for those things. I've walked many guys from the end of their careers into regular life, into where I'm at now. Just living like a normal person and still loving wrestling, which is actually sometimes hard to do after your career. To not be bitter at the end of the time.
Sorry.
To actually come back and love the game, and still do, and love being involved in it in any capacity. And like I said, I'm just grateful to be here.
One last question for you, Kev, because it just popped into my mind. What was a bigger highlight for you, wrestling in Championship Wrestling from Hollywood, or getting interviewed by the one and only Tommy Savoldi?
Well, I would have to easily go with Championship Wrestling from Hollywood. I really enjoyed my time there. I really enjoyed the backstage, getting the camaraderie. Some of the time I got to spend with Percy Pringle / William Moody. He always opened his locker room to me, and I got to spend a lot of time with him. I got to spend some time with Adam Pearce. The little time I got to spend with Dave Marquez. The people there treated me really well. The short time I spent with the Savaldi family, they were wonderful to me as well. But he made some choice comments about the South, and about me being from Texas. You're never gonna win me over like that. And so if I have to pick one, I'm easily gonna go with the good time I had at Championship Wrestling.
I brought up the Savaldi because I was looking for a good picture of you. That's on the other podcast, and I stole the photo from you on NWA on Fire with Tommy Savaldi, and he called you a so-called champion. I said, the man's got the belts in his hands right in front of you, sir.
Well, what does it say about the guy that got beat by the so-called champion that you're trying to push? You're trying to push in your own company. You kind of stick your own foot in your mouth when you do stuff
absolutely.
like that.
Well, that's going to do it for us tonight, guys. Thank you again for tuning in. Like Kevin says, we do this for the fans. We appreciate you. We do the live stream every Tuesday, 5:05 Eastern, ahead of NWA Power. We'd appreciate you tuning in. Again, if you guys would rather listen to this podcast instead of watching it, you could really find this on almost any streaming service, any podcasting service. Just look for J Cal's View or the Alliance blog, the Alliance guys. You'll find us there. But until next time, this is J Cal and Big Kev, and we'll see you guys at the matches. Good night now. Thank you, sir.
Good times, man. Good times. That was fun.
Always.